Were there any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
How do you interpret?
Just a minute. We want to make sure we catch everything. So we want you to speak in that mic.
How would you interpret the ability, presumably, of us to be aware of being aware? Eckhart Tolle said, "You are the knowing, not the condition that is known." I always like, I'm a dreamer, so I like to believe that's possible, that at some point in our evolution, this prefrontal cortex reached a level of height that we aren't anymore so much trapped in the flesh, but have the ability to stand outside ourselves and say, wait, who are you? What are you? Where are you? Why are you? What do you think about that?
That question is so in-depth. I don't think I could adequately answer it here. Could you phrase it as a shorter question? I wonder about the animals that I have, the intelligence that they show, and I wonder how limited they are by their biology, by their condition. Do they realize anything? I mean, I have my dogs. I can see rates of intelligence in them, and I can see compassion. I see true talents in each one. The stupidest dog I have knows how to open the back door and let the others in. The smartest dog can't follow her example. What's up with that? And I wonder on the capacity of some of the people that I know. I mean, there just seems to be aptitudes that don't follow the normal course of measure. There's a role-playing game called Champions that was popular maybe 20, 30 years ago. Somebody clapped. I think there are nerds. In that game, it strikes me as being a parallel of real life, because in the game Champions, when you create your character, you have 100 points. Everybody has 100 points, and you decide where those 100 points are. So wherever you want a strength, you are going to have to trade that off with a weakness. And all of us seem to do that. And the metric doesn't seem to follow any constant. You have a half a dozen or more different traits that you have to choose from, and the variables can be across the board. So it's not possible to say in a dichotomy, are they smart, are they not, are they aware, are they not? Everything, seemingly, is some middle spectrum. And I no longer believe in dichotomies. Are they or are they not? We all lie in here somewhere. Yes. Should we pass this?
Yeah.
The whiptail lizards that you were discussing before, in those, could each individual be considered an independent species since there's no interbreeding between the group?
There's no interbreeding, but they're clones. So each individual one is they're all part of the same one.
If any mutation were to occur, then they would just continue on without ever...
Yeah, well, you know that sexual reproduction, of course, is a much faster version of evolution, just like multicellular organisms evolve much faster than single-cellular organisms do because of the expanded arena. I mean, you have the cell. A single cell has been around for a billion years longer than anything else, multicellular, and so its mechanisms are almost perfect. But in the expanded arena of multicellular organisms, it has less control, it's less direct, and there are so many other configurations that will work. So multicellular evolution is faster. Sexual selection, you now have a mixture, and so they're much faster again. All you're talking about here is that mutations can happen. They can result in their species, just like with any non-sexual reproduction. We have actually several species that don't reproduce sexually. Some species of fish will flip back. I'm sorry, can nobody hear me?
No, I can hear it.
We're live streaming this.
All right, sorry.
One more time.
With feeling.
Yeah. Okay, well, the short answer is that sexual reproduction is faster. Speciation is possible with sexual reproducers and non-sexual reproducers. There are several non-sexual reproducers just within the vertebrates. A lot of people don't realize that. Some can spontaneously change back and forth from sexual reproduction to asexual reproduction. It's a slower form of evolution, but it can still happen.
Thank you.
I don't need the mic here. I'll be real quick. I'm glad you decided to discuss morals and altruism and bring something light to the table for discussion. But I noticed you also mentioned the extremes in some of human behavior, from those who were violent to those who were logical and stuff. I noticed that throughout evolution we still have our evil overlords, and we have those cycles where we get rid of them, and logic and progression comes to the forefront. Would it not be said that part of the cycle is having those types of individuals who are perhaps repressive, for lack of a better term, as part of this inherent cycle?
Well, remember I mentioned earlier that that natural selection tests all avenues simultaneously, even those that were never productive before. Just because it hasn't worked before doesn't mean that an aberration can't find a function eventually. So yes, in certain environments, domineering personalities, even sociopathic personalities, may have some advantage that can be carried on. Hopefully not in our society, but it happens. Anyone else? No, I bored you all.
Hardly.
You got a question? Okay, and then over there.
You mentioned our society. I'm assuming you mean America.
Well, no, I was actually speaking of our species, but yes.
I mean, there's just a germ. I'm reading recently how scientists now say that religiosity is evolutionary because apparently those who were religious stayed together. And I'm thinking about the U.S. and being a religious society compared to, let's say, Europe. And if we continue along this, I'm not happy about what I see. If we're a closed religious society, we're going to inbreed this religion, this religiosity. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, to a certain
Especially
degree.
since they reproduce more. It's true. There was a movie a few years ago.
Idiocracy.
Yes.
Yeah. Bruno, it's what plants was.
I would remind people of a couple of things. One of the things that I tell my family, often my kids, if they're worried about the way things are going to be, because there's a lot of paranoia in this particular society about what the future has to bring. And I remind them that all of the predictions for how bad things are going to be pale compared to how bad things have already been. And nobody seems to look at that. But I mean, if I tell my kids, if this were 100 years ago, I'd be dead. I'd have died of an abscessed tooth many years ago. I mean, most of us wouldn't have lived as long as we did, and you kids would now be working in factories with no schooling, and no relief. So, on the avenue of paranoia that's being instilled in many people, look at where we were. We can't even imagine. This is what we look at coming into the future is not that terrifying. What you're talking about is cycling. It's happened again and again and again. Athens is an excellent example. It was a very secular society, and they willingly allowed themselves to become completely religious, and the civilization eventually fell. Rome did something similar. Alexandria did something similar. We're just in the next wave. And someone else will rise, and then Japan will find themselves overrun with some new religion that they've concocted, and that'll be it for them. And somebody else will come up, maybe Tehran, as Tehran seems tired of what they've been putting up with up to now. Does that answer your question?
I think it does.